to make sure you weren't seeing the presentation because I can still see part of the presentation. So, okay, very good. Well, hello, everybody. It is good to see you. It is good to be here, and I get fired up about this stuff. And for those of you who are here to learn about different tips and tricks on how to be a better landlord, that's not what we're going to cover tonight. And I'm going to explain why. And I'm not being a curmudgeon with information. It's just that I have been doing this now for since 1998. So I've been doing this for 22 years, and I have made about every possible single mistake a person can possibly make in this business. And I've got a ton of information I want to share with you guys tonight, but I want to tell you a little bit about what I'm about, and really tell you my story about what completely transformed my life and my approach to business, how I went from working 16, 18, 20 hours a day in this business, no joke, to about 2 hours a week. And I say about 2 hours a week because sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But I went from this broke college student, fresh out of the Marine Corps. I built a $6 million real estate portfolio. Then I nearly lost it all back in 2008. And then I nearly, not kidding, died in the hospital because I was literally working myself to death. Now I've grown a portfolio to about 6 times that number. I live my life defined by what I want, not by anybody else's measure of success. Does that sound pretty cool? Like, I don't know about you, but that fires me up because now I get to define what I want to be as to being successful, not by some nebulous definition by someone else. So we're going to talk about that. But I want to show you how I went from being self-employed and treating my real estate like a side hustle to creating a business. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit what I'm about. First and foremost, it's freedom. It's freedom to do what I want, when I want, and with whom I want to do it. And that is, that might sound a little, cliche or whatever, but, the reality is I want to be able to define what that is. But first and foremost, it's about freedom on my calendar and freedom to do what I want and when I want and with whom I want to do it. So how do I do that? Well, for me, how I get there is passive cash flow. And I'm going to talk to you specifically about how I do that. But because when I was working 2 jobs and, then I went to working over 80 hours a week to living my ideal life, living my vision, and working, like I said, about 2 hours a week in my rental business. So as a result, I get to have lunch every day with this beautiful gal, my bride. I get to be intentional about building a relationship with her, being very intentional about my marriage to her. I get to raise these 2 little guys. These are my sons. Leland's there on the left, Logan's there on the right, doing our favorite thing. We're throwing rounds downrange. Ironically enough, the one on the right, he actually beat his brother fairly consistently in shooting, which is hysterical because they're both super competitive. But we're there at the range there. But we also get to laser tag. Again, we're also kind of we're like SEAL Team 6 when it comes to laser tag. We pretty much dominate every time we go out, but we have an absolute blast. But the really cool thing is, at the end of this month, we're buying this piece of property right here, and it's got a bunch of land. We get to go out. I'll get to go shooting, pretty much out my back door, and it fulfills a substantial part of my vision. Now, you're going to hear the word vision a lot here. So I don't use that word interchangeably with goals and stuff like that. Vision is absolutely critical, and we're going to talk about that here a little bit tonight. What I would like to do, I know this is it's a little bit trickier of a format because generally I do these in person, but because we're in this weird situation we are in 2020, I don't want to make this a death by PowerPoint. So if you've got questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat. Anish is going to monitor the questions that are in there and may kind of interrupt my flow here or there if there's some questions that kind of stack up, but I will be answering questions at the end, so don't feel like you need to hold on to these questions. But if you've got a question, definitely plan to hit it along the way. I will do my best to answer them that's way. But I don't want to make this a death by PowerPoint thing. So if you have interactions, I would love to hear from you guys. Specifically, which is going to make this a little bit better experience for you because I've only got roughly an hour and 15 minutes left with you guys. So what I would ask you to do is put away your phones, don't multitask while you're on here, because I'm going to be hitting some very high level concepts, but I'm also going to get down into the weeds a little bit. And if you're kind of miss the overall concepts, this is just going to be another webinar that you're going to, check the box and move on. I would rather you be completely and totally present for the next hour and 15 minutes. I promise you it'll be worth your while. And we'll get to answer some questions for you guys at the end, whether you're in real estate, buy and hold real estate now or not. Okay, so again, do not multitask. We're not good at it anyway, even though you think you are. So some of you are better at it than others, but generally, let's stay focused. All right. So, what are some problems that you hear about as landlords? What are some problems you run into as landlords? I'd like to hear that. Throw that in the chat. What are some problems that you run into? Because I want to make sure that I'm addressing your questions along the way. I don't want to make this just a presentation that I come in because it's a canned presentation and I've already prepared the slides in advance, but because I've got a lot of experience. I mean, let's face it, if this became illegal, I would have to become a criminal because I don't know what else I'm good at. I mean, I'm good at shooting and swearing and things like that, but and sarcasm, I'm probably good at that too. But realistically, this is stuff that I just know that I happen to be good at. So, if you are, okay, so non-payment of tenants due to COVID. Yeah, definitely. People don't pay. There was a video of a rental property totally destroyed by a tenant asked to leave the property. Yeah, I did see that. In fact, I posted that on my on the Landlord Coach Facebook page and it was heartbreaking. I was absolutely heartsick listening to it. I mean, if you're opposed to strong language, mute it, but you'll get the gist of it. But the man was just heartsick about what these residents did. And I can't help but question, a couple of things that he said in that video really made me question if he's running it like a business. And it sounded more like he was trying to run it as a charity, not as a business. And again, there's some bad people that are going to do some bad things, but some of the things he said in that video made me question if he was really running it like a business, if he was doing the resident screening, like we were talking about through Rent Perfect, or if he was doing other things and running it like a business. People don't call in time for repairs. People destroy your property. Absolutely. Right. So, we're going to cover a couple of those things along the way. You're going to kind of see it in the broader scope, but if I don't answer your question specifically, definitely bring it up during the Q&A at the very end. Okay. All right. So let's move on. So, one of the things, that I often, and I kind of bring this back into my realm because, I get in my own head, right. At times, like, Mark, you don't roll around in a Bentley, you don't live in a house that curves with the earth. How do you, why should people even listen to you? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's a great question. Why should they? I mean, so it's like, well, are you rich? Are you wealthy? Like, how would you define that? And I thought, well, that's a really, really good question because I'm, as I'm in my own head thinking this, right, I'm having this dialogue within myself. And I think, how do we define being rich, right? Well, being rich, if you're looking at the SEC definition, is being an accredited investor, which is like making $200,000 per year or $300,000 with a spouse, and the expectation of making that same amount that year, and having a net worth of at least $1 million. Now, if I made that in Indiana, I'm doing all right. If I make that in Manhattan, I'm probably barely making it. Right. So I think it's a very, very arbitrary definition of being rich. Right. Now, I love this definition of wealthy. And this is from my best friend, George Antone. He's actually not my best friend. I happen to meet him. If you haven't read his book, you really should. But I kid him. We actually met not too long ago on Facebook, but our paths have zigzagged back and forth. But he's written several books. I would highly, highly recommend them, no matter what you're doing in the real estate space. But he talks about being wealthy is having enough passive income to pay for your living expenses. So by that definition, am I wealthy? Easily. I'm easily wealthy because I don't work that much. And as a result, I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess from that aspect, I am wealthy. I do have enough to pay for my living expenses. And therefore, I get to do other stuff, right? So, again, am I rich? Am I wealthy? I'm going to come back to this, all right? Because first I want to tell you a story. So it was about 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday. And I had been up since 6:00 in the morning the previous Friday. Okay, so if you're doing the math, I'd been up like 20 hours. Okay, I was in an apartment finishing up the last little bit of maintenance that I was doing for a move-in that morning at 8:30. Okay. I had a little bit of cleaning to do, some painting, and then they were going to be moving in that day. So, so as a result, I'd been up for 20 hours, and I had, like I said, I had some paintings, a little bit of maintenance to do, not much, probably a couple hours worth of work left to do. The problem was I was completely and totally spent. I was exhausted. My feet ached, my back hurt, I had that bleariness, that sandiness in my eyes, and it was taking like 5 minutes from like paint tray to wall back to paint tray. Like the law of diminishing returns was definitely kicking in. So I needed some desperate sleep. So I thought about it, and I started doing some math. Now, not highly complex math. This isn't like, Sally gets on a train heading in one direction. It was very basic math. To sleep in a bed, I could get in my truck, drive home 15 minutes, take about another 10 to 15 minutes to drag myself out of the truck, drag myself into bed, get settled in, sleep a couple hours, and then reverse the thing, 15 minutes out, woke up, get dressed, 15-minute drive back to the apartment to sleep in a bed. A full hour I would have lost to do that. Or I could have slept there in the rental unit. So without a whole lot more thought, took my shoes off, I rolled up in a denim painter's tarp, if you can imagine that, and used a beach towel for a pillow. As I'm laying there getting settled in, I got thinking, I remember feeling how heavy the denim was kind of against my skin. It was coarse and it was heavy. And it's funny the things that you remember when the sense of smell, right? The smell of glass cleaner was on the towel, the beach towel. I must have either used it to clean a window or it just spilled on there. I laid there thinking, this is not what I signed up for when I got into rental properties. This is not the lifestyle I certainly signed up for. Now, unfortunately, I would love to say that this was not a typical day for me. I slept there for a few hours, woke up, finished the apartment, got the move-in done at 8:30. But this was very usual for me because I was working 16, 18, 20 hours a day. But by most people's measure of success, I was absolutely crushing it. I was busy. I was out doing the hustle, right? We all know about the flexing the hustle muscle, right? We're out there doing that thing. Well, here's the thing. I had 92 rental units that I had amassed through a variety of wheeling and dealing a hodgepodge of creative financing that I had put together these 92 rental units. It was $6 million worth of real estate. And I was working anywhere from 16 to 20 hours a day trying to keep up with it all. It was the absolute definition of hell. And of course, I thought I was a god, I put that Loki slide in there for you Avengers fans. But the reality was I was absolutely, it was imploding, this avalanche of work, because I was doing everything. I was doing the leasing, the showings, the bookkeeping, the banking, opening the mail, doing bank deposits, filing evictions, doing the maintenance, taking phone calls. The phone calls were endless from 6 a.m. till 11 p.m, and sometimes in the middle of the night when I had emergency maintenance calls. I was handling everything, and it was absolute madness. Now, you might probably think that a pace like this eventually catches up with you. And it did. So what happened was I was working 14, 15, 16 hours a day prior to 2008. Now, for those of you who were not in the market during that time, a little thing called the Great Recession happened, and the labor market fell apart, and everybody just basically stopped working. Okay. So the problem was, as I'm, trying to keep my business afloat, this $65,000 a month in revenues that I was making, all of a sudden in 1 month, shrunk down to about $30,000 a month in revenues. Okay. So again, rather than actually, try to cut my losses or anything, I just worked more. I was like, okay, well, I've got vacancies over here. I've got this going on. Well, eventually, these 18, 20, 22 hours, 24 hours at a stretch, I was trying to work. I was trying to catch naps at Lowe's in the Lowe's parking lot, or, people would honk their horns at me just because the light turned green, when I was trying to catch a nap. I mean, I say that in tongue in cheek, but I was literally falling asleep anywhere I could because I was just literally working myself to death. So like I said, it caught up with me and I ended up getting a cold. Well, as I got this cold, it turned into something really, really bad. And the only way I could actually breathe was to put pressure against my chest and lean over the back of a chair. So I went to the hospital and said, something's really wrong. And they said, okay, well, we'll put you in a hospital and, or we'll put you in this room over here. We said, weren't you here a little bit ago? I said, yeah, I was here yesterday. The doctor said to, take some medicine and get some rest. Of course, I took the medicine and promptly went back to work. I didn't get the rest, but they said, okay, well, go in the room. We'll bring you a breathing treatment. You'll be okay. Brought me into the room. They set me down and I laid there alone, panting, kind of mouthing for air like a fish out of water. It wasn't long before I couldn't even get up because I was kind of gulping for air, and my fingertips started to get tingly, and my feet started to get tingly, and my vision, if you're watching the screen, started to go down to a tiny pinpoint of light way off in the distance. And the really amazing thing was I was very calm, and I was convinced at that point in time I was going to die. And I thought, wow, I literally worked myself to death. Literally. With that resolution, I closed my eyes, what I thought would be the last time, and resolved myself to my fate. Now, hang in with me, as I promise you, there's an upside to this. But lady comes in, sees I'm in a pretty desperate state, fits a mask over my face, and I'm finally getting this breathing treatment that I so desperately needed. On top of that, my $6 million worth of real estate was imploding all around me. And I had lost $4.5 million worth of real estate in about 8 months. So the economy was in the middle of falling apart. Everything that I had built in the previous 10 years had evaporated. And now I'm sitting there thinking about, okay, all the things that were basically wrong with my business. Okay. So I know this all sounds pretty heavy. So let's pull over and park here for a second. Okay. I had a lot of people in my corner. I had a lot of people trying to help me out. Okay. My dad, I had a coach. I had some other business owners that were trying to help me in a B&I group I belonged to. I had plenty of mentors. I was reading a ton of books. I was trying to figure out what was going on. And this is no surprise that I needed a system, right? Okay, so hang in there. I promise I'm getting to it. But as I'm sitting there, I had been a business student at Purdue, but I was never a student of business. So I started looking around at things that were running well. So, of course, I get this 3-day vacation in this hospital, if you want to call it a vacation. This is where I spent 3 days, okay? And I have all this crap. My phone was probably ringing. I have no idea. I couldn't answer it because it was shut off. It was taken away from me. I'm laying in this hospital bed trying to clear the fluid out of my lungs. And all the while, my life is circling the bowl. And on the first day, this little nurse comes in with a needle. And she says, I need to give you a shot in your stomach. To which I replied, you need to work on your marketing. No, you're not giving me a shot in the stomach. I said, well, what is this shot for? She says, well, you're going to be laying in bed for the next couple of days, and we don't want you to get blood clots in your legs. I said, okay, well, this thing you've got me hooked to is on wheels. I said, I can get up and walk around, can't I? So she looked at me like I was asking her to explain Bernie Sanders. And I said, no, I don't need that. Go away. I'll be fine. I'll get up and walk every few hours. She says, okay, fine. Don't leave the floor. I said, I'm not planning on it. So not long later, this other nurse comes in with another needle. And she says, I need to give you a shot. I said, what is this for? She says, I need to give you some insulin because this stuff that we're giving you, this prednisone that we're giving you, is jacking with your blood sugar, and it's making you, whatever. I said, okay, why don't I just cut out carbs and we'll figure it out tomorrow. Like, if it's still too high, you can give me the insulin. So she took her needle and she went away. Here's what's interesting. These nurses were operating within a system. They were not doing anything that they weren't told to do, or a system hadn't come up that they needed to do stuff within, okay? So within that, I was sitting there thinking, and again, I had nothing to do with, or, watch, Oprah on TV, or sit there and kind of think, okay, what's going on in this world, all right? So now pay attention. This is where the payoff is going to start to come in, because you're going to start to see where this all started to come together, all right? So now, I came down to 3 different buckets that I could put things in that was kind of wrong with my business, wrong with my life, kind of all this like real deep soul search that I had for 3 days of being trapped in this hospital, okay? The first thing was processes, okay? Everything was in my head. Everything was in my head. And as a result, because everything was in my head, everything was reaction-based. And because I was responding to the most burning fire in the moment, it was incredibly inconsistent. Now, I mean, I can deal with consistently bad if it's because it's a bad process, but I was so inconsistently bad or inconsistently good, I couldn't replicate it, okay? That was the one bucket I figured out. The next bucket was, even if I had processes, I didn't have an infrastructure to run any processes on, right? Like, it would be like, well, people would say, well, you need to hire help. What was I going to do? Hire somebody, walk them into the room and yell, do work, and then run away? Like, that wasn't going to improve my state of things in the universe. So I had nothing to run on these processes. So what am I thinking of infrastructure? Like, I didn't have an office. I ran everything out of my truck with a laptop stand in my truck. I had a printer in my truck, and it was a nightmare. Like, that was my mobile office. I mean, it was, I don't know, it was cool, I suppose, but it really was far from effective and certainly not very efficient. I also had the wrong type of properties. Now, I want to say something to you guys. Many of you, and just hear me out. I had the type of properties, I was taking on properties that needed such a high degree of maintenance that it was attracting clientele that needed a very high degree of management. Okay, let me say that again. Because I was buying properties that needed such a high degree of maintenance, I was attracting clientele that needed a very high degree of management. Okay, is that making sense? Now, again, it's just, I was looking at, hey, I can buy that property for $50,000, $60,000, put a couple into it, and then rent it for, look at the percentage return I'm going to get. Wow, okay? You don't pay bills with percentage of return. You pay bills with dollars. And the net dollars I was making just wasn't enough. And I also was handling a lot of nonsense because I felt like I was raising someone else's adult child at times, right? Just handling nonsensical things. So that was the other side of the infrastructure. We're going to talk about that a little bit later tonight, okay? So that's first the process bucket, then we had the infrastructure bucket that I didn't have. The last bucket was I really had no direction. Why was I getting out of bed in the first place? Why was I doing this? I mean, I was a pretty smart guy. I mean, I graduated 352nd out of 354 in my high school, the top 98% of my class. I'll let that joke sit in. But realistically, I didn't have any reason as to why I was doing this all in the first place. Well, I didn't need to work 18 or 20 hours a day. Why was I doing this? As a result, I was stuck on stupid. And instead of stopping at 30 units or 40 units and then deleveraged and really delivered a vision for what I really wanted, I just was stuck on more. I needed more. I want to get to 100 units. I want to get to 1,000 units. And it always seemed to be in increments of 25. I have no idea why, right? Like sending me, it's like not having a vision of what I was doing or why I was doing it was like sending a Marine into battle without a clear definition of victory. Okay. I mean, of all the books that I was reading on real estate at the time, it had me so focused on the why, but never, or it had me so focused on the what and the how, but never the why. Okay. So that's really what I want to make sure that this is what we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the why tonight, because I really feel that once you get your why covered, the rest of it kind of fills in. Okay. So here's one of the things. I'm a big Sun Tzu fan. If you don't know Sun Tzu, he was a Chinese general, wrote The Art of War back. I don't even remember when he lived. It was like the 16th century. And I am a definite scholar of Sun Tzu. I've actually never been able to find this quote, but he's been attributed to this quote, and I can certainly see him saying it. But tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And I absolutely agree with this. And I just want to give you a quick self-defense analogy. Many of you have not met me. Many of you not seen me. I'm not a real big dude. I'm 5'7", $150. Okay. I can defend myself pretty well in a self-defense scenario, but I'm going, if you were to ask me, teach you how to defend yourself, I would know how to do it from a person who's 5'7" and 150. If I'm going to try to defend you using a shoulder throw to defend against someone that's 6'5" and outweighs me by 250 pounds, that's not going to work out well for me. That's why a lot of gurus who may have wonderful strategies that are great strategies for them and great strategies for some people, it's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. That's why you need a strategy first and then fill in the tactics that align with that strategy. That's why I look at, again, goal, strategy, tactic. Like I want to know what you're trying to accomplish first, and then we'll fill in we'll figure out what tactics are best for you. Someone could say to me, hey, Mark, you can make $10,000 a day. All you have to do is knock on 1,000 doors every single day, and you'll make $10,000 a day. That's fantastic. I don't want to do that. A, that sounds like way too much work for me. And B, I don't want to have to knock on 1,000 doors. That sounds like that's terrible. It doesn't fit with my skill set. It doesn't fit with what I want to do. And therefore, I'm not going to do it. It's like when these people on Facebook say, hey, you'd be great at selling whatever it is. Fill in the MLM. You'd be great at selling it. I probably would, but I don't want to do it. It's not really what I want to do. Okay. So that's why I'm not going to be real tactic heavy tonight. I just want to prepare you. I just want to tell you that we're going to hit some strategy stuff. We're going to get some infrastructure stuff. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about some tactical stuff, but the tactical stuff is going to come on the Saturday event. Okay. So we'll talk more about tactical stuff, but not tonight. That's going to be on the Saturday event. All right. So, and then Anish and Ryan can fill you in on the exact details of that. But so the VIP method is when I wrote about on the book. So if you're looking at the screen, this is the book here, The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. Buy it, don't buy it. That's okay. If you're not a reader, you can listen to it on Audible. It doesn't, if you know anything about selling books, I don't make a ton of money selling books. So, this isn't a hard power play for you to buy a book on Amazon. I'm just letting you know, this is the book that I have, and this is the tool I have in my toolbox. But when I wrote The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, I felt it was important to identify the why first. So this is why, where the VIP method was born, okay? So this is what helped me go from working 20 hours a day to just 2 hours a week. All right, so you ready? All right, so buckle in. This is where you want to take some notes, okay? So this is what it's about. VIP stands for Vision, Infrastructure, Process. Vision is specifically what you want to accomplish. I've been to many RIAs across the United States. Invariably, most times I will show up. Sometimes people don't even recognize, they don't know that I'm the speaker. And I say, oh, what is it you're doing? What are you trying, what are you working on? Well, I'm really trying to get into rental properties. Oh, really? How many rental properties are you looking to get? And it's always some weird number that's in multiples of 25. I'm not sure why, but it's always like, oh, I'm trying to get to 50 rental units. I'm trying to get to 100 rental units, whatever. Okay, fine. To which I reply, 100 rental units. Okay. So 99 wouldn't get you to where you want to go? Oh, yeah, 99. Yeah, that would probably work. Sure. Yeah. Just hundreds are a good round number. Okay. But 92 wouldn't get you where you want to go? Wouldn't deliver the vision, wouldn't deliver your ideal lifestyle? right? And here's what I find, that most people are confusing the number of rental units with the life output that they think that that will buy them. Let me say that one more time. They're confusing the number of rental units with the life output that they think that that will buy them. If your vision at a very basic level is to lay on the beach for 2 months out of the year rubbing cocoa butter on your belly, that's a great vision. So what's it going to take for that to make that a reality, right? That, I mean, your vision, you were not put here on the planet to have 100 rental units. You were put here on the planet to do stuff, right? Probably maybe lay on the beach for 2 months out of the year rubbing cocoa butter on your belly, but maybe also to maybe own a cool house where you can entertain people. Maybe have a really cool car so you can feel significant and feel important. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe you want to go out and, preach the word of God or dig wells in Kenya. I don't care. But and I'm not saying any one of them is better than the other. I'm not morally superior to tell you what your vision should be. You get to define what your vision should be. The problem is most people are not defining their vision. Most people, and even people who are really successful, are not defining their vision. They're making money hand over fist. They're making $100,000, $200,000 a month, and they're flipping miserable because they're not living any sense. They're like, what am I doing? It's no different than me laying on the floor of a rental unit covered in a denim tarp. Why are you doing this? You need to take time. It's like, oh, well, wait. Well, I got my goals. I know I got this. Check the box. I know what I'm doing. I'm very goal oriented. Okay. I would challenge you to how specific that vision really is. And when someone really starts to poke holes in that vision of how really honest you are about that vision, how much are you really willing to give up for that to be a reality? I'm not telling you that any part of your vision is wrong, but I'm just telling you that you really need to get really serious about that, because vision, once you have your vision clear, then you build a business to reverse engineer and deliver that vision for you. Okay? So you get your vision clear. And then the next piece of that is to build your infrastructure. Now, the infrastructure is the bones of the business. That's your desks, your chairs, the software, and including the types of properties. Remember I talked about the types of properties, the asset class selection, okay? So the bones of the business, like, okay, desk, chairs, okay, got it. Property management software, okay, got it. Not Excel spreadsheets, because again, Excel spreadsheets are great to start, but they're not going to syndicate your listing for you when you have a vacancy, right? I mean, why are you making it more difficult on yourself? They're not going to keep track of every little aspect of what is of what the property's details are. Like, you don't have to recreate the wheel every single time you've got a vacancy. Okay, different things like that. Okay, but remember too, we talked about the types of properties and the asset class selection. But again, the reason why vision has to come first is because, like I said, if you're going to lay on the beach rubbing cocoa butter on your belly for 2 months out of the year, if you build an infrastructure that's going to require you to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, that's going to suck for you if you're trying to lay on the beach rubbing cocoa butter on your belly for 2 months out of the year. No one wants to work from the beach. I mean, it sounds cool, but when you're on the beach, you want to be on the beach. I mean, you want to be present where you're at. Okay? When I say, like, it's cool that I get to have lunch with my bride every day, that's because it's intentional. It's because it's part of my vision. Because if I wasn't intentional, it would be like, oh, well, I'll have lunch with my wife someday, But no, I'm super intentional, and as a result, we're super, super close. And I love that because she's awesome. And, but it's because I'm intentional about my relationship, because my infrastructure doesn't require me to be hovering over it every minute of the day, right? Finally is the process. The process is how you do stuff, okay? It's the things, the tactics, the rules upon which you operate, which runs on the infrastructure that you built, that all stays in alignment with your vision for the future. Okay, is this making sense? Give me a thumbs up, give me a yes, give me something, because this is really important that you understand this before we head on, because I want to make sure that you got to have your vision clear, then your infrastructure, that you're going to build the infrastructure. Okay, good. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Marcia. Okay, great. Patricia, thank you. Okay, so in terms of the process, I don't want to gloss over that. The process is basically the SOP for you military people out there. You'll understand the standard operating procedures, the how you do stuff. Okay, that's kind of the lead. Those are the tactics that the gurus teach, right? So if you love a tactic and you go, man, I love that tactic. Okay, great. Then you can put that tactic in place and plug it into your infrastructure. If that tactic doesn't fit, then you don't don't worry about it, right? Just move on. Okay, great. So, and yes, I will go into more detail specifically on the process on the Saturday event. And we're going to spend a full 2.5, 3 hours on the Saturday event, and it costs you nothing except your time. All right. So let me just point this out. So the vision infrastructure process method, okay, right here, that the infrastructure and process, that's where the system is. The VIP is not the whole system. The vision has nothing to do with real estate. I don't care if you went on and, you know, and sold, you know, hair ties. It doesn't matter. The point is whatever is going to be able to deliver that vision for you. Then you have that infrastructure and process that's going to deliver that vision for you. So again, this could work in any business. For those of you who have businesses already, or whether you're wholesalers or whether you're fix and flippers, this will work. Vision, infrastructure, process. Define your vision, then place an infrastructure in place that will deliver that vision for you and processes that will run on that infrastructure. It works across the board in small business. Now, this is, again, so I was able to turn a $6 million portfolio into $1.5 million. On the backside of that, now I have over 257 or 250 units. That number moves because I also manage properties for other people. But I have just shy of a $40 million portfolio that now like I said, I went from working 20 hours a day practically to about 2 hours a week, where I go in, sign some checks, maybe return an email or two, and the gals in the office say, don't touch anything on the way out. Because, I mean, they've got it. And I don't need to be messing with stuff. Okay? That's how I was able to accomplish that with the system. I'm going to talk about this vision piece just for a second here. This doesn't have anything to do with real estate, but I want to help you adopt a clear vision for your future. Okay? Your future needs to be as obvious as the past. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I think when you have a clear vision, it's like a mama watching over her baby. It's that mama bear watching her cub. I think the most dangerous place on the planet, arguably, is between a mom and her child. Because that mom, a good mom, is going to claw over you and run through you to get to that kid. You might walk by her side, but you don't stand in her way. I believe my truth is that's because the mom has a vision to watch that child grow up and be healthy, to be successful. That's the kind of ferocity of purpose that you need when you have a vision, and clarity of vision gives you that ferocity of purpose. Am I making sense? Please just tell me that I'm not just speaking to my own computer, because I just need to know if this is making sense to you. Because when you have that clarity, nothing's going to get in your way, and it's going to help you keep from getting distracted. And let's face it, real estate is a very distractible business. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. But so let's see here. All right, so absolutely, I'm listening. Okay, so I'm in. All right, thank you, Johanna, Marcia, Pedley. All right, thank you very much, Philip. I appreciate that. Okay, so now, so here at the end, if you look on the left, the personal vision roadmap. That's a full roadmap. That's part of my course. I'm not going to be able to. There's no way I'm going to be able to go through all that tonight. But what I did do is I boiled it down to just a couple of questions for the mini course, the workbook that's there on the right, okay? You will get that download. You'll have access to that download. Just hang in there to the end, okay? So I'll tell you how to get that at the end. But here's what I want to tell you about having a vision, all right? As cool as it is to have a gigantic boat, it is not cool to have a gigantic boat that sits in your driveway. What I'm trying to create for you with a super clear vision for your future and what kind of lifestyle you want is to create white space on your calendar. Okay, fine. I'm not rolling in a Bentley, but you know what? I don't want a Bentley. I want to have the ability to go and do the stuff that I want to do when I want to do it. Okay? So I want to have wealth. I want to have time wealth. I want to have open spaces on my calendar to, hey, if I want to flip a property, guess what? I can go flip a property. If I want to go do some wholesale deals, I can go do some wholesale deals. If I want to go do nothing, which I'm planning on doing tomorrow, because I've worked on a really long project for a while, and I'm kind of ready to be done. I'm taking tomorrow off, and maybe Friday, and maybe Saturday. I haven't figured it out yet. I guess I talk a big game, like, oh, I'm going to take all this time off. and I get bored after like a day. But the point is, I want to have that flexibility in my calendar. Okay, so that's the white space I'm trying to create. So we're trying to create this vision. And also, vision gives you clarity, and it helps keep you from being distracted. Let me make this point to you. Who has ever met this guy? Hi, I'm Jack, and I'm a wholesaler. This is the first meeting you meet him at, right? First meeting, you're like, wow, Jack's a real go-getter. Wholesaler, seems like he really, right? He's going to get it, right? He's out there crushing it. By the second meeting, Jack's a rehabber, right? Here he is. This is Jack. Okay, I'm not sure why he's a rehabber all of a sudden. By the third meeting, here's Jack. He's a note investor this time. Okay, I think you've met maybe Jack or someone like Jack. Maybe you're Jack. Okay. Okay. Now by the fourth meeting, he's in cryptocurrency, which I have no idea how that leaked into the real estate space. And then of course, Jack's got a sense of humor because Epstein didn't kill himself. But anyway, all right. So let's move on. So remember, so having that vision is going to give you absolute clarity in what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Okay. I just want to make sure that you guys understand. I don't have time to cover the vision. There will be, more pieces of that will help you answer some pieces of your vision in the workbook. It's a boiled down version of the actual full roadmap, but it's going to get you started. You don't need to buy anything if you don't want to. If you want to, that's all you need for right now. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It'll get you where you want to go. But now I want to shift and start talking a little bit about the infrastructure and process section. Now, again, we're not going to have a whole lot of time to talk about process, but I do want to talk a little bit about infrastructure tonight, so you specifically know what kind of properties, what kind of infrastructure do you need, right? Now, remember, I talked about like property management software and things like that, and you can get a lot of that in the Time Wealthy Investor. I don't want to spend a lot of time. I would rather talk a little bit about stuff that's not in the book than rather spend the time together talking about something that is not in the book. Okay, so I want to talk about something that's definitely not in the book, and you're not going to see this except here tonight or in the course. In the infrastructure part, we talked about the asset class selection. Now, what am I talking about asset class selection? So asset class selection is specifically, I've met hundreds of Jacks, and I'm Jack too. Okay, Marcia, we all know a Jack. Isn't that very true? So Danny, I'm going to answer your question before I move on here quick. Do I consider time wealth a vision or an effect of the vision? Time wealth, I think, is the result of your vision. I think time wealth is the ancillary benefit that you get from having clarity in your vision, because cash flow delivers time wealth. What you do with your time wealth is completely up to you. When you have time wealth, which is open space on your calendar, when I say white space in your calendar, I physically mean like an actual calendar and there's actual white space. Like I've got nothing all day. That's white space. Okay. So time wealth is that allows you to have whatever you want in your vision. The thing is, you really need to define what your vision needs to be. Otherwise, you're going to sit at a bar drinking all day, or sit at a casino playing roulette all day, like I was doing for a little bit, because I had lost my way in terms of my vision. That's why I too have a coach. I'm not suggesting everybody needs me as their coach, because quite frankly, it can be a tough pill to swallow for some people. That's okay. I'm not a one size fits all coach. What I'm saying though is that everybody needs a coach to help them hold them accountable to their vision and what they really do want. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Thanks for that great question. All right.
Hey Mark,
yeah.
Can I throw in some questions that I got in here?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So one of them is, let's see, is Section 8 worth it as a tenant? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do not like Section 8. Section 8 is the HUD voucher, if that's what you're talking about.
Yep, exactly.
Here's why I'm going to say this. And I don't mean to make this a political discussion. It's just my thoughts. You're asking me the question, I'm going to give you my honest answer. I think it sets people up to fail. I think it's a broken system. I think it does not allow, HUD does not hold their residents accountable to the condition of the property. And the only arrow they have in their quiver is to cut them off. So if they go sideways and they move in a dog or they move in someone else, the only arrow they have in their quiver is to cut them off. They don't hold them accountable to the condition of the property. I mean, they do to a certain extent, but I don't like it, and I don't like it for those reasons. The 10% of people, maybe 20% of people that actually has helped, I'm sorry, I don't want to build a business around that. I just don't like HUD.
Okay. What about, how do you actually find quality tenants? Jeffrey was asking us.
It's a great question. Now, I will tell you this. There's no real quick down and dirty answer for that. But I will tell you this. When I got really serious about running this as a business, for those of you who haven't seen the like I said, there was a heartbreaking video of this man. I mean, he was at the point of tears. He was so angry that the residents had removed the double pane windows, put them on the floor, and smashed them with a hammer. Like, was absolutely, they were vandalizing the place. And I alluded to earlier some of the things that he said that made me realize that he was not operating like a business. He said that he had loaned them $2,000. I'm sorry, I don't think he was talking in the realm of, I let you live here for free for $2,000. I think he actually gave them $2,000 out of his pocket. You don't run business that way. You don't run a charity. And when I started getting really serious about running my business as a business, I started attracting a type of clientele that it was just a different demographic. They were adults that valued their time, so they also valued my time. These were not people calling me up at 2 a.m. to tell me that the dog is barking. You know, these were grown-up adults that had grown-up problems, right? Like, they knew that they needed to pay rent. As a result, right now in the COVID environment, we're not having resident issues not paying because they know that they owe the money. Very rarely. I mean, we have over 250 units. We're going to have some of it, but it's like 1/10 of 1%. I mean, it's a very, very low number. I think it's 1 or 2 units, and it's because they're legit out of work. So when I started addressing the type of the asset class, a better asset class, right? An asset class that was, because I identified them as an ideal client avatar. That's who I want to work with. I want to work with people who have, who are going to pay $1,200 a month or more in rents, right? Just as an example, I don't know, your mileage may vary depending on what your market is. But if your average rent, if the lower end market's 800, it was funny. Once I started getting above a certain threshold, I stopped having nonsense problems like that. But I also absolutely, positively, you've got to have resident screening, and you've got to have policies in place that you're absolutely 100% going to follow. If you're going to have policies in place, don't put them in there just to make exceptions. So, if you're going to use Rent Perfect, to do your resident screening, fine. Just make sure you're doing it consistently and you have a process in place to where it's done and the emotions are removed from it. So I know that's kind of a nebulous, long answer, but there's no really good way to do it. But it's a couple of different things that I started doing that really got me much higher level, much better clientele.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Actually, speaking about asset class, Yvonne's asking, do you own any condos, or do you think that's a good investment versus, the other asset classes you're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest with you guys. So all I've ever done is residential. I look at residential use properties, okay? So in the banking world, I was in banking for a while, took a 12-step program, and now I've got all the banking out of my blood. But what I would say is, whatever asset class you feel most comfortable with. I do have a couple condos, not ones that I own, the ones that we manage. They do tend to attract a little slightly better clientele than single family dwellings. But it sometimes they're just like glorified apartments. So to me, I didn't really like them as much as I like single family dwellings, because I'll tell you what, I know there's a lot of people, and Grant Cardone's one of them, who jumps up and down on single family dwellings. I'll tell you what, man, I fell in love with the occupancy rates of a single family dwelling. I had people fight. I mean, I used to have people, when I was doing it myself, I had people literally moving out the back door while someone else was moving in the front door, and I'm painting in the middle. Like, literally, like, we're all just kind of moving, from left to right. And I'm telling you, when you can start getting 11 and a half, 12 and a half months of rent out of a property because people have that much demand for single family dwellings. Look, if you can't buy the American dream, you can rent it. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of people that like renting properties. Hell, I mean, right now I'm renting a house. I've got a lot of real estate that I could live in. I'm renting my property now because my wife and I were not really sure where we wanted to. And we're kind of looking, we're not really in love with property. But like I said earlier, we're looking to close on a house that we can make our forever home at the end of the month. So I like single family dwellings, and that's just my basis of comparison for everything.
Yeah, makes sense. What about, is it a good time to raise rent by $50 during a renewal to someone who's never paid rent late? So they're talking about raising the rental, especially with COVID-19, or what your thoughts are, something of that nature.
Okay, that's a great question. And we're going to cover more of that on Saturday through the landlord cycle. But what I will tell you right now is I would really, I'm going to put on my economics hat for a minute, because I'm a kind of like a hack economist. I love economics. I probably would have gotten my degree in economics if it wasn't some silly, something at Purdue at the time. I was just like, well, I'll just get a degree in accounting. Here's the deal with economics. What's going on in the economy right now? Inflation is already here. Not, oh, if inflation happens. Inflation is here. Just because gas prices are not out of control does not mean inflation isn't here. Go try to buy building materials. Go try to buy appliances. Go try to buy toilet paper. Go try to buy your staple goods, and you'll realize, oh my gosh, are you flipping kidding me? This is out of control. Inflation is here. When you inject $22 trillion into an economy with more on the way, inflation is here. So as a result, rent today is worth more than rent 12 months from now. So I would highly suggest you do not get into long-term leases. Get into a year's lease, okay? Price it as much as you can, with the expectation that you're going to be able to raise that rent again, because rentals are the hedge on inflation, and you should always raise rents. I don't care if it's $5. Never get them used to the same rental amount ever. I mean, gas prices go up and down, and we shrug our shoulders. We try to raise our rent to our residents for $10, and it's like there's a riot that breaks out. Are you kidding me? So to raise there's a way to do it to not be inflammatory. It's in the book. I'm not trying to be like close to the best with information. It's just too much to say in the answer. But if to raise the rent $50 on an otherwise good paying resident, you've got to warm them up to the idea and say, hey, look, I'm really trying to not raise the rents on you. I know we're in a weird environment right now. Prep them. Maybe get them into a longer term lease and say, hey, look, I really need to raise the rent $100, but you've been great. You've been never paid rent late. Can you meet me halfway? There's something that I refer to as the perfect mess principle. I know where I'm going. I'm going way off script here, but the perfect mess principle is, now I'm going to go into character here for a second. Okay. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
All right. Man, I'm overacting right now. Jim, you have really been an amazing resident. I mean, I wish I had 10 more Jims. I wish I had 10 more of you. Honestly, it really hurts my heart to even have this conversation. Man, how do I even start? Look, I guess just to say it, our prices, our costs have gone up so much. I don't know what else to do except we have to raise the rent a little bit. I mean, realistically, I'm probably looking at like I don't know, like $100 rent increase. I don't want to do that to you though. I mean, is there any way that I can maybe meet you in the middle? Something like that, because I don't want to not be able to afford maintenance on your property, and I got to have enough of a return to where I can make sure I'm paying the banks and paying all the people. I mean, is there any way at all that maybe you can meet me halfway, right? Now, I've done a lot of prep work up to this point, okay? I'm out of character now. That perfect mess principle, it follows, if you've ever watched a have you ever watched young children in a play where one of them's the little, one of them is a tree, right? And the other one is Sir Lancelot. Their lines are terrible. Their costumes don't fit right. And they're forgetting their lines. They're flat awful. They are such a mess. You're trying to be more perfect for them. Okay? I'm showing up to this guy I've reasonably probably have a good relationship with, and you legitimately need to raise the rent because prices will go up. You're showing up as such a mess, right, that he's going to be more perfect for you. Okay? It only works if Jim's not a mess himself. Okay? Because then he'll be like, oh my God, I know. Let's just all join hands and walk into a helicopter blade. You're like, no. That's not what I'm saying, right? So again, this comes with some prep work. But what I'm saying is, and this is covered in the book and it's covered in the course, but I'm just saying, like, there's personal skills here that you have to understand that are in play. You can't just go, oh, here's your $50 rent increase, take it or leave it. I'm too perfect, right? Have you ever had someone where you showed up and said, hey, can you deal with, hey, I've got a problem. Do you think that, maybe you can help me? You say, nope, can't do it. That's the policy, suck it. And you're like, really? Like, that's your response to customer service? Whereas, hey, I really wish there was something I can do. Yeah, that's our policy. Maybe I could check with a manager, whether she checks with the manager or not. She's more of a mess to your perfect, right? Absolutely. That's the difference. So it's a parry. So I know I'm going way off script here, but that's super, super important because, again, real estate is a people business. Right. This is not about bricks and sticks. This is about people. This is about managing expectations and managing their emotions and helping keep your emotions in check. So I'm not trying to manipulate people, but sometimes you just need to show up in a different way to create something different within them so you can both get what you want. He gets to stay in a place that's affordable, right, pays an extra $50 a month, and you get what you need by keeping an adequate return on the property.
I mean, basically, it sounds like it's a win-win is what you're really trying to make it. So that's, so the tenant feels comfortable, you feel comfortable, there's no drama. And I totally agree with you too. And I'll let you get back. I just had one little last thing that Absolutely. I based on our polls was that 2/3 of our viewers are actually managing properties themselves.
Nice.
1/3 are using a property manager. So
okay.
What would you say? I mean, even for my own curiosities, what number do you get to where you're not managing it yourself, or is there a number, or, I know you're talking about lifestyle or all the above. Like, how do you figure out, or how did you figure out?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I don't think it has anything to do with unit number. I think it has absolutely nothing to do with unit number. I think it has everything to do with your skill set. Because the fact of the matter is, I talk to some people that they love the idea and the concept of having rental properties. And the reason why they hate it, and they go, I'm just going to turn it over to a property manager. Okay, let me ask you something. And I'd like your answers, like what you actually think. Property managers have a unique situation because I am too a property manager. I'm a broker. So let me ask you something. I manage residents. I manage properties. I manage vendors. I also manage owners. So I have 4 different sets of clientele that I have to manage and manage all their expectations and manage everything else. Do you think that job is somehow easier because that's what I'm designed to do? No, most property managers are terrible at what they do. Ask me how I know. Yeah. Because many of them come to me and go, I want 300 doors. Dude, you have 150 and your life is a disaster. Why would you want to double your portfolio? And it's always about door count. I want 1,000 doors. I want 1,500 doors. It's all about door count. And I'm thinking, good God, guy, like, your life is a disaster. You're spending, let me tell you how most property management businesses are structured. It's one guy or gal, 1 or 2 guys or guy or gal being worked to death while there's 3 or 4 other people kind of lingering around, and I don't even know what they're doing. Again, ask me how I know. Because when I saw this operating, and it even happened in my own business for a while, I was thinking, what in the world is, what are they doing? What is their job, right? So if you get nothing else out of tonight, I want you to, in Saturday, if you show up on Saturday, you're going to become a process expert where you're going to look and see, oh, okay. Because here's the thing. Every single time I get a complaint about a property manager, it's always one thing. Always one thing. They don't communicate. They never tell me when the residents don't pay rent. They don't tell me when the maintenance needs to get done. They don't tell me all this stuff, right? When you have broken process or broken infrastructure, it shows up in bad communication. I'll give you a quick example and then we'll move on. Have you ever been in a restaurant where you've had bad service? We all have, right?
Yeah, correct.
We've all had bad service.
You ever been down to South Florida? I'm kidding to my restaurant friends if there's anyone out.
Not you guys, but everybody else.
Everyone else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can see the problem as you sit back at your table and go, well, that waiter's got 7 tables and that waitress only has 2. Someone needs to fix that problem, right? You're on the outside looking in because you can see now it's either a broken infrastructure, meaning they didn't schedule the tables evenly, or a broken process where maybe someone called off and someone didn't figure out that Zach needs help. And, there's either an expediter or a manager that comes around that fills in, right? So it's either broken infrastructure, broken process. You cannot communicate your order to the kitchen. That's the problem. There's communication issue. So that's why I want to make sure that you understand if you're dealing with a property manager that has bad communication, it's because of bad infrastructure or bad process. Okay. So the number, the unit count, I don't really care what it is. I think it's more about what your skill set is. You might be great at doing deals and horrible at everything that follows. If you're like me, I think that you can manage properties yourself a lot cheaper. I think you can have your finger on the pulse a lot better, but you cannot be disengaged. The worst type of owner that I have as a manager are ones that are disengaged and don't feel like, oh, well, I'm just going to turn it over to a property manager and they'll handle it. That doesn't, passive income is fantastic, but it doesn't come for free. You've got to be engaged.
Makes sense. Totally makes sense.
Awesome.
So I'll let you go back to your presentation.
All right, great. So I'm going to try to, because I don't want to run you guys late. I know you guys have lives and certainly, I could do this all day because I get fired up about this stuff. But when we're looking at infrastructure, we're talking about, specifically want to talk about from this point going forward, asset class selection. Remember, it's important to pick the right asset class to deliver your vision. So remember, I had chosen an asset class that needed a high degree of maintenance, which was attracting clientele that needed a very high degree of management, okay? I was playing a game that was not worth winning. At the end, just hang in there, I promise I'm gonna share this with you. I'm gonna also give you, so in addition to the vision roadmap, or the workbook rather, so it's a limited boiled down version of the vision. But I'm also going to give you this 5 mistakes to avoid when analyzing rental properties. This is going to be when you're analyzing rental properties, I've made every single mistake in here. And so if you want to put your hands up, tell me who the math nerds are in here, you analytical people, you're going to love this. For those of you who literally want to jump off a bridge when you see math, I'm sorry, but hold your breath. I promise it'll be worth it. But this is analytical stuff that is absolutely critical that you get this right. Okay. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through kind of quick. So just hang in there with me. All right. Mistake number 1 was not analyzing properties correctly. Okay. So when I look at, and this is what you'll see in the workbook that I just posted. What you'll see here is grossly. Now this top section here are all the revenues coming in. Okay. So revenues are the money that you get. Okay. So what I'm seeing here is grossly overstated rent amounts. What they'll do is they'll go on and they'll say, oh, well, that property, yeah, I think I can get, fill in the blank, $1,400 a month. I probably can squeeze $1,400 a month out of that. I think I'd pay that. And they're not going on any empirical data. Okay. They're going by rent zestimates, which drives me bananas because I've never seen a rent zestimate that has been not at least 10% too high. Rarely, okay? Maybe your mileage may vary, but in my market, just have not seen it. The other thing is they're including in their analysis, I'm talking about before you can buy the property, in their analysis of buying a property, they're including revenues like late fees, pet fees, okay, application fees, laundry, if you don't have a coin operated laundry, if they're charging for like a washer dryer, right? Whereas maybe the residents bring a washer dryer. You can't budget for stuff like that. I consider revenues like that like gravy at Thanksgiving at my mom's house. It's great if you get it, but don't count on it. Okay, so that's the grossly overstating the rent or the revenue, the total revenues that are going to be coming in. Okay, the next thing that I look at are, so this is the total revenues that you'll see here. So I don't want to so the total revenues that are coming in. The next part is expenses. Expenses, what drives me absolutely crazy is when people get lazy and they start using flat percentages just to fill it in. Now, I will use a flat percentage just to do back of the napkin math. But if it comes down and I'm starting to look at a property that I'm really actually going to buy, I'm going to get really intentional about the, I might use a flat percentage to say, okay, that hits the initial criteria. But if I'm going to really do an analysis about before I make an offer on a property, I'm going to use as real numbers as I possibly can get. So let's skip down to the expenses section. So I want you to remember this. Every line item in the expense category should represent something in the real world. Okay? Here's what I often see. Rent, $1,350 a month. Less your mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, $736. And 30% for CapEx, repairs, vacancy, other. I don't even know what CapEx stands for, but it sounds good. I saw it on a Bigger Pockets podcast, so I'll just throw that in there, right? And my net profits, and then other, you got your other category as well. My net profits gonna be $209 a month. Sounds like a good investment. Okay. This is just flat laziness. I don't think that this is exactly. Thank you, Jack. That's the capital expenditure is CapEx. We're going to get to that in a second. I'm going to tell you how to calculate CapEx properly. So using flat percentages is what yields you. So 30% would represent 5% CapEx, capital expenditures. We'll talk more about what that specifically is here in a second. 10% for repairs, 10% for vacancy, and 5% for the ubiquitous other category. Okay. So again, it's just being lazy. He was messing with me. Okay, I figured. Well, he might be putting that out there for other people too. So, but here's what I want you to remember. If you take nothing else away from tonight, every line item that you don't fund in your expenses, every line item that you don't fund becomes a job that you have to create, or becomes a job that you have to do yourself. It becomes a job you either have to pay for yourself or you have to do yourself. So every line item that you don't budget for or don't budget for adequately becomes a job that you have to do yourself. Okay, becomes a job you've created for yourself. So you don't budget enough for leasing, guess what? You just became a leasing agent. You didn't budget enough for mowing, guess what? Now you're in the mowing business. Repairs, maintenance, painting, whatever, that's basically it. Now, we're going to talk about CapEx for a second, okay? So for CapEx, CapEx is specifically, hang on a second, I got to get a drink of water. So CapEx, if we're going to look at rent of $1,350, capital expenditure is really about setting aside money for the capital improvements for the property, bigger ticket items. Many people will just say, well, furnaces, roofs, maybe a water heater. Okay, that's a great start, but what about a driveway? What if you have a long driveway or a driveway that's made out of, asphalt that's going to need to be, resurfaced? What if you have a retaining wall that needs rebuilt? What if you have siding on a property that's just not going to hold up, for long term, and you need to replace that, right? So CapEx isn't just for the obvious things. It could also be for things for capital improvements of the property. Okay, so your rent is $1,350, 5% CapEx. Using our flat percentage is $6,750, okay? This, what I'm about to show you, is what I should have been doing. If you look at the screen, you're going to see a chart across the way now. And this is how I actually analyze properties now. Let's look at HVAC, your furnace, air conditioning system. All right. Now, you don't have furnaces down there in South Florida, but you probably have to run AC all year long. Okay. So your average life of your HVAC system, arguably somewhere between 20 to 25 years. Let's go 25 years. The age of that system is 5 years. Again, we're doing this analysis up front. So we've got 5 years into the system. They replaced it 5 years ago. So I've got 20 years left in that system, okay? The estimated future cost of that, let's say for argument's sake, in 20 years, now you can do the math. The math is actually, okay, so what if inflation is, 3% or 5% a year? So it would be 1.05 to the 20th power times whatever the cost of the furnace today is, or the HVAC system. But I'm not going to overcomplicate it. Just take a ballpark. If it's 6,000 today, maybe 8,000 20 years from now. Okay, just budget for that. That comes up to $400 annually, or $33 a month that you've now allocated for that repair when it comes time, or not repair, but for the replacement when it comes time in 20 years. Okay, let's do the same thing for the roof. Roof average use is 30 years. Our average life is 30 years. The age of that current roof is 8 years. 22 years left on the system, or on the roof. Future cost can be $12,000. Okay, $45 a month, so on and so forth. And I did the same thing for the water heater. Okay. So remember our 5% CapEx number. So if you add all of these things up, it's $91.28 for all of these three major systems that we're going to end up replacing. Now, remember our 5% CapEx number? Now, $67.50 versus $91.28. Not a real significant difference, but what if we used the 5% CapEx for a property that I bought with significantly less rent? Okay, let's say $750. Our 5% CapEx number is now $37.50. Okay, not a barn burner, not terrible, but again, our margin is going in the wrong direction. Okay, so if we're looking at this now, let me just point this out. If you were right, you're going to be short $7,200. Exactly. Thank you. So if, let's say for in the course of, however many years, if that's going to be 10 years, the point is, let's look at this. Let's look at if our HVAC system has 15 years on it. And now instead of $33 a month, it's now $66 a month. And our monthly CapEx has gone up from $91.28 to $124.61, $125. Okay. So just to keep up with capital expenditures, just to keep up with the replacements. Okay. Let's look at, again, let's go back to the assumption. Hang in with me there. If you're non-math people, hang in with me. We're almost done. But that $37.50 difference that you've allocated to a property that's bringing in lower rent, which arguably probably is an older property because it's not commanding a high rent. Now you've got a shortfall of $87 a month, which amounts to like a $10,000 shortfall in a course of 10 years. And because I didn't get that right, that's why I get wild swings in my cash flow, because I might get like 6, 8, 10 months of awesome, like, yeah, rents are great. Oh crap, I have to replace what? Right? Like, that's why I was getting these wild swings in cash flow. If I could fund this and put this in a separate account, and I do in my CapEx account, then when something comes down the pipeline, I go, oh, okay, that sucks. It didn't really impact my rent because I've already set that money aside. I just take it out of the capital expenditure fund. Therefore, I don't get these wild swings in cash flow, right? The same thing goes for repairs and maintenance, okay? Again, using flat percentages of 10% for repairs, which is $135, okay? Again, I'm being lazy. If I'm not using practical real world numbers, I was being lazy here. So how does it make sense? Now, follow me here. How does it make sense? If I'm getting rent of $1,350, then I'm budgeting $135 a month versus rent that's $750, where I'm only budgeting $75 a month. Again, going back to my argument that an older property is probably bringing in lower rents because it's not as desirable and therefore I'm allocating less money to repairs? How does that make sense? Okay, guess what? Guess what kind of job I created for myself? I created a maintenance job, okay? So as a result, I was buying more and more properties that were just not, again, I had created this awful maintenance job for myself because again, I wasn't allocating enough money. Remember, every line item that you don't budget for becomes a job that you create for yourself, okay? I'm gonna show one last line item here, okay? So hang in there, we're almost done. So the thing that drives me bananas is that, again, using a flat percentage for vacancy when they don't really recognize what that represents. Vacancy represents time, okay? And time obviously is money. So if you start thinking about your rental properties where, okay, well, I'm not going to, I mean, once today's inventory of time is gone, you're never getting today's inventory of time back, right? You can't resell today's time. So if you've got a vacancy today, you're never getting that vacant day back. So when you start considering about, like, I don't rent properties, I sell time, it sets you up well to be successful in this business. Think about this. Instead of using 10% for vacancy, think about it. That represents 1.2 months. That property is going to go from $0 to turn to showing the property, to screening a resident, to getting them approved, to getting the sign a lease, to moving in and handing you a check. 5 weeks. Can you do that? Okay, maybe you can. I know many people can't because they're not intentional about this. They don't manage their vacancies very well, and they get chewed up in opportunity cost. They get chewed up because of the lost time they're never getting back, okay? So 8.3% vacancy represents 4 weeks, okay? How quickly do you reasonably think that you can get a property turned? Reasonably, like over time, okay? I can't answer that for you, only you can, because you know your capabilities. If you're gonna be the one, you're like, look, I've got 2 rental units, I can turn them really fast, I can have it rented in a weekend. I mean, okay, fine. I would still probably be a little conservative, don't go super crazy, but again, if you can budget this and say, okay, my 5% vacancy, well, guess what? If that person stays in your property and you're budgeting 5% each year, and that person stays in your property for 3 years, you're money ahead. So now you don't have to send that money to a vacancy expense account. You're already money ahead. Make sense? So vacancy represents time. Now, I'm going to say this. Some things are appropriate to like management fees to use a percentage because that's what they're going to charge you. They're going to charge you a percentage. They're going to say, we collect 10% of rents. Okay, make sure that in that case, a percentage is appropriate. Okay, but in other cases, you still need to figure out, let's say you're going to manage it yourself. Okay, that's fine, but you still need to figure out what's going to take for someone else to manage it for you. That's why I like to use a VA. And I use a company that's was previously known as CC My Admin. They're now Boson Solutions. I love them. Yeah, they charge $30 an hour, but you know what? They charge when they pick up the phone, answer my problem, hang up the phone, and send an email. Like, problem's done, problem's handled, right? That's $4, and that's to keep it so I don't get woke up in the middle of the night. Hell yeah, I do that, and I do that all day long. So things like that are things that you can easily budget for, and it doesn't need to be as expensive as you might think, okay? If you want more of the underwriting guide, so again, for those of you who hung in, go to landlordcoach.com/5 mistakes. Landlordcoach.com/5 mistakes. So you're going to learn the 4 other mistakes that to avoid when analyzing rental properties, and you will get the vision workbook, not the full roadmap, but you get the workbook, the boiled down version to kind of get you kickstarted into your vision. All right. So last slide here. Am I wealthy? I think I'm wealthy. I think I'm time wealthy. Am I rich? Here's the answer to that. I think I'm rich because I get to live the narrowest part of my vision according to me. And that, because I get to live my vision, that makes me rich. I don't care being an accredited investor or having hundreds of rental units or whatever. That's not what defines me. I get to define because I have intentional relationship with my bride. I have, you know, I have an intentional relationship with my gal, my sons, my God. I get to go shooting with my sons. I get to live a lifestyle that I wouldn't otherwise get to live. So to me, that's all that matters. I'd love to have your questions. For those of you who'd like to follow me, I'm on the social medias, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, all that stuff. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, so Mark, I got just a couple, some are really specific of what's happening here in Broward County. So
Okay.
for those questions, I actually already, because I know it's one of our members, tomorrow we have a local attorney that's going to talk about the eviction. So that's going to be more suited for them. Someone had a question about which VAs do you recommend, or are you using VAs?
Yeah, I mentioned that in a little bit. So let me, I can put that in the chat.
Okay.
So it's the address, it's ccmyadmin.com. So that's who I like. Oops, I think I sent that to you.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
So I'll put it in as a web address. They've since done a rebranding. And I think I'm gonna do my best to spell it properly. I think it's BOUSN Solutions, BOSNSolutions.com. Either one will take you there. I like to use a VA firm because I don't want to rely on one single point of failure. I don't want, you know, my gal who was a friend's daughter's former dog owner. Oh, she's fantastic. But, you know, if she gets sick or she goes on vacation or she doesn't answer the phone because her phone died or whatever, I don't want to worry about, you know, that not having continuity. So, that's the firm I like.
Yeah, we actually had an issue with that. I had a VA and all of a sudden they disappeared for 3 weeks.
Yeah, and it happens.
Yeah, it's a challenge. So I learned the hard way. Anita asked, do you purchase homes close to your house or proximity? Or do you buy out of state, or what do you personally, is there?
I know there are some people that are really comfortable buying out of state. It's not in my comfort zone. I just like to be, I enjoy real estate. I enjoy watching, you know, things evolve and you know, we got into the conversation a little bit earlier about watching, you know, this small town not far from me build its infrastructure up. And the real estate pricing is starting to go crazy because the infrastructure there, the hospital expansion that's been built, a 6-lane highway has been built there. I mean, you know, leading to it. So you know, I like investing in stuff that's fairly close to me. But that's just my approach. I mean, I know, you know, in your particular area, pricing may be out of your reach. So I know some other people will, you know, sell properties where they're at and invest in other areas where the pricing isn't so crazy. I know a lot of California investors do that. So, yeah, you know, but whatever works.
Yep, absolutely. And then I know this is more obviously as a business entrepreneur. They're just asking, what do you do about your health insurance since you're self-employed?
Great question. So I am actually, what I wanted to do, and this is more because I wanted to be fundable. I actually am a W-2 employee, waged employee of my management business. And I was able to offer a really good health insurance policy for not only myself and my family, but also for my employees. So with that, I'm pretty healthy. I mean, but still, like, I wanted as a high deductible as possible, but then they're like, you know, it's kind of like, well, you have to everybody has to get it, right? So so I was able to get a rock star. I think our deductible is like $1,500 a month for a really, really good policy. I mean, we had better insurance than Purdue University, like, wow, for a while. I mean, but we're a small company, but we were like, we have really good insurance, and people were like, wow, that's really good insurance. And I was like, yeah, but it's expensive. So what I would suggest is, because I've got the business set up, I have it paid through that, through a group plan.
Right. And actually, I know someone, Jose, you're asking about the website again to the download. It's actually on the chat. If you just pop it back up, landlordcoach.com /5 mistakes.
Yeah, /5 mistakes. Yep.
Yep. So it's on there. If not, you could always email us directly at the office. I'll get you that information too. So actually, that's all the questions that we got, because I know you covered a ton of stuff. I know time always goes by so quick. So that's why we did, just so you guys know, we did convince Mark to come back. When I say come back, virtually come back,
Yep.
spend 3 hours with us. And again, it's free. So for you not to, like, this is just like, I don't know, just a little taste is the easiest way I could say it. I know you're going to go in depth on that Saturday event, and, with the workbook and everything else that we're going to talk about.
Well, yeah. So again, tonight we glossed over vision. I mean, vision usually takes some browbeating for several weeks from me as a coaching student, or they want to self-administer, which I totally get, because I did that for years. That's in the actual course, but you're going to get a good start in the download. You'll get that for free. So you'll get go to the landlordcoach.com/5 mistakes. I promise not to spam you. I do send some emails from time to time. You can opt out anytime. You won't hurt my heart. I had my feelings removed in the Marine Corps, so don't worry about that. And I grew up in a Scottish household, so we have no feelings. I mean, I hadn't done to begin with. So, but the Scottish and Italian household, if you can imagine that. But Saturday, we are going to get into the actual process, which is the specific of the landlord cycle from day 0 to day 365. So what happens from day 0, where you're making no dollars, to day 1, where you're moving in, day 7, which is the onboarding process, to day 30, which is the beginning of the collection cycle. And you'll have, if for a 12-month lease, you'll have 11 collection cycles that run to day 245, which is the renewal cycle. Okay. So day 245 starts 120 days out. And then at day 365, which is the end of that lease, and you either go back to day 0 or you go back to day 1, one of the two.
I just love that you're a numbers guy like me. So talk about,
and we have the same haircut.
I know. You got to be bold and to know your numbers, right?
I got a little bit. Yeah, I'm in denial.
Awesome. So
people that couldn't pay, we worked with them. There was just a couple that were, some people. I mean, you're going to get the people that are grouchy in good times and bad. It doesn't matter. It's like, you're just going to get that. But and they recognize that we're not here to shake them down. We're just, and they honored their agreements. And I think that when you're dealing with grown-up adults.
Thanks, Mark.